Leopoldo, there were several scenes from inside your home when you were under house arrest. Take us back to the experience of being on house arrest and still filming yourself while you were being monitored.
Well, I was without freedom for 7 years. I spent 4 years in a military prison. Then I was taken to house arrest. Then I was taken back to a military prison. Then I was taken back to house arrest. And then I escaped from house arrest and went to the Spanish embassy, where I spent a year and a half. In total, I spent almost 7 years with my freedom confined. And all of the stages were very different from each other. Being at home was very difficult. I think it was the most difficult part of the 7 year period, because they made my home a prison, not just for me, but for my children. I have small children. Manuela was 8 years old when I went to home arrest. My son Leopoldo was 5, and my daughter was a newborn. So my house was surrounded by the military political police. It was completely monitored. I had not one, but two electronic bracelets in my ankle, and I had to take 4 pictures every day as a hostage with the newspaper of the day at 6 a.m., 12, 4 p.m., and 8 p.m. So that was my day to day. Even though that I was sure that I was being monitored, or that I didn't really know to what extent I was being monitored, I was very active in my activism. I have never ceased to be active. Even when I was in solitary confinement, I would do what I could to outreach and to collaborate to the process of liberalizing our country. So I never stopped talking when I could, and that's how I engaged a conversation with Max and Nelson. We had hundreds, and maybe, I don't know, 100 hours of recorded conversations all throughout my period when I was in house arrest, and a little bit when I was in the embassy. So they have that day to day, and I think that comes out in the film, that there are different people confronting this process of a dictatorship from very different angles. But what's most important is that, given that diversity of people in different areas of Venezuela, geographically different sectors of the social spectrum in Venezuela, we all have the same hope, and that hope is freedom. And I think that you don't know what freedom is about until you lose it. I knew what freedom was about after spending 4 years in a military prison in a 2 by 2 cell with a lock the size of a cinder block, and with guards that were very hostile. That's when I learned what freedom was about. That's when I truly learned what freedom was about, because I knew it from what was being taken away from me. And I think that countries like the United States, European countries that have freedom, sometimes they don't realize how fragile freedom is. And we were a country in Venezuela that was an example of freedom and democracy for the rest of Latin America. We were an island surrounded by dictatorships, an island of democracy and freedom surrounded by dictatorships. But we didn't know how fragile freedom and democracy was. So we started losing, step by step, different types of freedoms. And those different types of freedoms were not, at sometimes, not strong enough to engage the entire population. But we had many instances of having millions of people go out to the streets, and then, unfortunately, the dictatorship to remain in power. But people would go out again. And I hope that is the situation that we see in the future. I, of course, have learned many things about going out to the streets. I have always been an activist, completely engaged in what nonviolence is about. We have learned the theory, we have practiced the practice, we have trained our people, we have gone out, not once, but many times, out to the streets and promote nonviolence. I truly believe in this, but I believe now that just nonviolent protests are insufficient. And if you look at different countries that over the past years have gone through similar protest cycles like Venezuela, all of us are in the same situation. And I will mention a few: Myanmar, Bielorrusia, Russia, Nicaragua, Cuba, Venezuela, just to name a few. All of us have had massive street protests. But unfortunately, in all of those countries, still remains the autocratic regime in power. So A la Calle gives you a very good insight of what nonviolence protests are about the motivations of people that go in the first line of that. They're taking risk-taking approach to protesting. But it also opens a reflection: what else is needed in order to have political change and in order to promote free and fair elections?